Now move on to the high point of today's agenda, which is a fireside chat that we have Rachel Whetstone, Global Policy Head of Uber, and Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in conversation with each other. Thank you so much.
Hello? Yeah. So we have no fire, but we can chat. So it's wonderful to meet you. I spent this morning talking to some incredibly inspiring women entrepreneurs. I sometimes think that there's a lot of similarity between entrepreneurs and politicians. Being a politician is very hard. You have to believe in something. You have to be prepared to fight for it. You have to dust yourself down when things don't go quite how you expect, and you have to be very resilient. And so as somebody who's been tremendously successful in your career, and doubtless you've had some moments when things have gone well and moments when things have gone less well, what's your advice to women when they're thinking of starting a company, knowing that there's going to be some tough moments ahead? How do you find resilience in yourself, and some words of wisdom for them?
Well, I'm not sure if it is going to be words of wisdom, but certainly I had started a business. I don't know if I should call it as a business, but I did start a venture. And actually the content of the venture was very good. It was a school. I was very proud of it. The children were proud of it. The parents were proud of it. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out. So here am I talking about, don't worry, if you want to shut a business, you can. I'm saying it from my experience. But nothing has been a taboo on that score. And if anything, people remember the good work rather than, the fact that you couldn't scale it up, the fact that you couldn't sustain it, didn't work against. Mm-hmm. So I think we should just be clear that you want to follow your passion, do it. Mm-hmm. There could be a time when you don't any longer have to do it. Muster the courage to walk out.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful advice actually. Our founder is a guy called Travis Kalanick. One of the things he really believes in, he has this concept called champion's mindset. And his point is winning is not about coming first. It's about the ability to, once you've failed, pick yourself up and keep going. And that's the sign of a real winner, somebody who doesn't give up, who continues to fight for the things that they believe in. And I think, the first business he started when he was at university, he dropped out of university, actually failed. And he was able to dust himself off and then set up another business and then set up Uber. So I think it's a big cultural change in a lot of places. And I think one of the things that the Silicon Valley is very good at teaching is don't worry about the failure, keep going, have your passion. And it's so wonderful to see a government minister say, don't worry about it, keep going. I was sort of interested when the Secretary was talking about your plan and how you think about, when you're thinking about startups, you think about government funding versus ease of doing business. I know you've made some brave decisions on ease of doing business, which I think is super, super hard for governments to do. It's always easy to create rules and very hard to take them away. Versus education. We're talking a bit about, when you're looking at tech, how do you get people the skills that they need? And how do you think about that? And which are the bits of some of the stuff that you're doing you're super excited about in terms of those areas?
As regards skills, mm-hmm. There's quite a lot of work happening, but probably it's at some level it has more work to be done. Mm-hmm. And there's a ministry which is focusing on it, so I'm not worried if there's energy, if there's mm-hmm. planning, if there's activity happening there. But I'm super excited about one thing. Startups today realize that it is possible to try. Mm-hmm. It is possible to look at areas in which India has been terribly found wanting in terms of thought, in terms of processes, and in terms of people reaching out. Mm-hmm. So I constantly try to dispel this myth that most often your startups are only tech startups. Yep. Actually not. Many of them are doing wonderful work on agriculture, mm-hmm. health, yeah. education. So I'm glad that startup does not confine itself to only talking about tech startups. Mm-hmm. And in India, these startups which are going into remote village areas, doing water management, yeah. Understanding the best practices which existed in this country earlier, because after all, we had systems of water, mm-hmm. drainage of water, use of water, storage of water, and rainwater harvesting. Mm-hmm. Many of those have really decayed. Encroachments have killed them. But today you find using technology, we are restoring a lot of them, and so beautifully at that, without really making technology appear as though it is against the practices which existed, the age-old practices. So this beautiful confluence of technology together with the existing practice, restoring certain kind of essential life-giving resources, is something which the startups are beautifully walking into, and I'm so happy for that. And when we work with them, it really gives you a lot of satisfaction.
No, I'm so pleased you said that. I was there was two healthcare startups we spoke to this morning who were really interesting. One was around education and women's education around healthcare and how you think about that and how you change attitudes. There was also, I can see the founder over there from a service called Taxi. Do I get it right? Where they're thinking in Bangalore about how you help women get around and how you do that, and fascinating how it, getting women to be drivers and how you do that and what are the hurdles. Obviously something we think about quite a lot. And I think I agree with you, the application of the technology in the real world to help improve existing systems is something that's incredibly, very, very interesting. I was wondering if you wanted to just talk a little bit more about Startup India. You've obviously been instrumental in that. The ministry has been instrumental in that. How do you think about that, and how do you project that to the outside world? And I think one of the great things that government can do is give entrepreneurs the confidence to go and pitch overseas and realize that because of the technology, actually the world is a global market in many ways, and you have opportunities that maybe didn't exist 15, 20 years ago just because the platforms are there for you to reach audiences and customers all around the world.
Surely, I think that's the most exciting bit for a startup. Because India is a large market, there's no doubt. You have areas within India where growth is not evenly spread, as a result of which a startup can have an opportunity in one or the other part of the country. But other than that, because of such innovations which are being worked out, startups do have a potential to expand from out of India, but into areas, into countries, into geographies, which have no benefit from a startup. So for me, to identify such geographies, to make sure that our startups benefit from getting an access to those areas is a big challenge. And I would definitely be spending a lot of my time on that, even as I'm looking at trade negotiations, even as I'm looking at commodity exports, even as I'm planning for project exports and so on. One of the interesting thing which happened, and which is yet to get formalized, but which I'm working on, is you have India's best companies doing project exports to, let's say, countries in Africa. They go build bridges, they have roads laid out, hospitals are constructed. They also take manpower from here who are very qualified, tech-savvy people, and expert medicine practitioners, paramedics, all of whom who go there. But also together with them, I am very inclined to say, if in such startups who are doing things towards healthcare can also be dovetailed with these project exports, it addresses two things immediately. One, it gives the scope for the startup from India to access a market abroad, the issue that you've been talking about. And then in the project export itself, if a startup is also a party or a component of a large project export that we're doing, you find the cost effectiveness of the larger project itself comes down. Or the cost effectiveness goes up, the cost itself comes down. And to that extent, a blend of startups together with the large companies going out to have a project export done is a combination which I would like to give the benefit for the startups themselves. It also comes off handy because many of the newer areas into which we are going, like for instance vast stretches of land where we are extracting minerals, or we are doing cultivation abroad, or water conservation work happens there, startups have novel and newer ideas which can be easily scaled up. And many large companies probably do have this issue of either scaling down or scaling up according to the requirements of the country where they go. And in that way, I think India has a big opportunity, huge number of startups who will be benefiting from such a contact.
Yeah, and it's been incredibly interesting to us, if I look at all the countries around the world that we've invested in, how open to innovation India has been comparatively. For us, we're in a very large number of cities here. Now we have about over 200,000 drivers who are using Uber once a month or more. And it's just, been government we've found to be phenomenally open here to new ideas, and we've really enjoyed working in partnership with you, including actually also our investors. We have two particularly big Indian investors in Tata and Bennett and Coleman, and they've given us some wonderful advice about how to think about India. And one of the things that we've really noticed, which I know you've touched on a bit today, is the differences within states and cities. And I think there's this very interesting, in some ways, competitive tension within India about how you think about innovation within your city, how you think about changing things within your city and the business environment there. And I know to some extent it's something that, is a real strength for India, because it means you get much more creativity because you have the creative tension that comes with that. And sort of how you think about that from a central government perspective.
For us, it's both a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge is because we know talent exists in these areas, in these tier 2 cities, in these states which till today have not really benefited from this startup ecosystem. But yet, it is as to how the benefit of a startup ecosystem which does not exist there will have to be taken to them. For instance, most often, in fact in the last few months, my colleague, the secretary, and Shailendra, who was here, joint secretary, have all been working on having a national convention for all the startups, trying to talk to them, get them on one plank, and make them tell us about more things that we need to do and so on. The temptation and the recommendations are always, hold it in Bangalore, hold it in Hyderabad. And we will be holding it in Hyderabad, we will be holding it in Bangalore, but then why do we need to constantly overlook, let's say, Orissa, let's say Uttar Pradesh, let's say Jharkhand? These states do have a lot of young talents. They have fantastic solutions to come up with. They talk about the local requirements very well. But how do we reach them? Why should we exclude them because the ecosystem prevails in Hyderabad or in Bihar or in, let's say, Noida? How do we at all encash on that system which is absent there, but that has to be reaching out to them? So this is a challenge we are constantly facing, and we are making, at the same time, I'm not here to artificially transplant an ecosystem which cannot survive in in an area. But then this is a countrywide phenomenon. There can be many Bangalores. Why should we go back to Bangalore for everything? Why should we go back to Hyderabad for everything? Can we create many more Bangalores and many more Hyderabaads? So that's a challenge, and that is where I think your experiment saying, let's say Orissa or somewhere, you would extend your training to women, or you would call women startups from all over the country and have a challenge, is very interesting, and that's the kind of thing I think we'll certainly like to associate ourselves with.
Yeah, no, and how do you, I know that the sort of smart cities initiative can be an important part of that, because you say it doesn't just have to be the usual suspects in cities, which are great and we all know them and understand them. And obviously we're very interested in smart cities because we think that by using the existing transportation infrastructure with smartphones, we can do a lot to help reduce congestion by using the system more efficiently, and we can extend public transit networks. And I know that Smart Cities Initiative has been a really important part of government policy and how you think about that, and how do you think about sort of what might be called tier 1 cities versus those other kind of cities as part of the Smart Cities project?
Smart cities actually are not going to be only the metropolitan. In fact, they are not. Many, when we are talking about 100 smart cities, and the priority has been laid by themselves, in the sense cities which thought and had a plan, were trying to bid, saying we have these current infrastructure, we have the potential for future, and that is how the set of cities which had to be chosen were chosen. So for me, smart cities are one way of addressing India's issues related to whether startups, whether services like yours, for instance, where a public transport system may or may not exist, or may not exist to the fullest requirement. And to meet the challenge of a public transport or public mobility itself, you need the help of institutions or organizations which can try to have a scientific and schematic way of handling it. Smart cities can be one. where you can make a beginning. Because many of them are certainly not metropolitans, certainly not such metropolitans where you have a public transport system worth the name. And many of them therefore would want variants of Uber. And probably just not cars, but many other, scooters and small tricycles. It could be anything, because Indians are very versatile in moving around. They just don't dip. Much before the world thought of a CNG-based motorcycle-driven auto, there were fatfatis in most of the towns. That was a completely Indian fabricated vehicle in which more than 5 people could happily move with their commodities intact, with their luggage intact. We could move from one place to another. I'm not saying that's the best of the ways to do, but local innovations had worked. But that had unfortunately stayed where they are. They didn't scale it up, they didn't modernize it, they didn't get syndicated to become, very quickly an organization which can have a city-wide coverage. So every individual remained the same. He had a scooter, he served the public and earned his living out of it. But the aggregation did not happen. And therefore, where public transport systems are skimpy and where scaling up did not happen, without affecting, let us say, the individual entrepreneur in doing his own little thing, to be able to aggregate is a fascinating idea, and it can help even smart cities.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting from our perspective, because a lot of, when you talk to drivers, they view themselves in many ways as micro-entrepreneurs. They like the fact that they can push a button and start work when they want to, and they can turn off, when they want to. And you see in some places that, that the business works really well for them, so they then maybe get a couple more cars, and then they expand the business out that way. And the other thing that we found is very interesting is the economic impact within a city of improving people's ability to get around and people's ability to get work. So we've seen the big impact on that. I guess one question for you is, for bigger corporates that are more established and more successful, what do you expect to see from us? What are the things you'd like to see more of, and what are the things that you see done well that you would like other companies to aspire to within India?
Mentoring is one thing I would want all of them to engage in. Because they've, after all, grown in the system, and they've grown big, and they're able to now stand up and say, this is what I contribute, this is what I get out of business here. But mentoring is something which there's never enough of. India requires a lot of mentoring, because the population size being what it is, the largeness of the country being what it is, and accessing everybody who wants to do something is difficult for government. And therefore, when corporations like yours, for instance, and startups which have really found their success, and if they've really understood the pulse of what business is, and therefore led to success themselves, they should give back in terms of mentoring more people. Mentoring need not end up in competition. Mentoring actually probably builds the spirit up, and there's more space for everybody. And it actually generates more demand for the services which are already available. So I think mentoring is one thing I'll definitely suggest. 2, instead of thinking that the success that you've attained is yours entirely, it might be useful for you to repeat and also to, in a way, codify what actually led to the success. Because that's what is going to help government enable with policies. What actually stood as an obstruction? Where was the handicap? And what did you do to get over the handicap? Your experiences should be documented for policymakers. That's another thing on which I would like you all to, rather than look at it as a trade secret, put it into documents and give it, so that we can work on it.
Yeah, well, we've been thinking about it quite a lot because of self-driving cars. So we have a self-driving car project in Pittsburgh on the east coast of the United States. A lot of people ask, what should government do about self-driving cars? And I think one of the things that we're learning is we don't quite know where the technology is going to go yet. And so we want to get the technology good before then we think about what the regulatory system should be like. And then, working with governments in those cities where they're prepared to have the innovation. And Pittsburgh's a super hard place to do self-driving cars, because self-driving cars don't like the rain, they don't like the snow, they don't like the unexpected, and Pittsburgh's full of those things.
They probably don't like the crowd.
Yes.
And therefore we would think it's too early for India.
Yeah.
We still want driver-driven cars. We have a lot of people to work. So
yes. Well, we're hoping that I think we think that the self-driving cars will create all sorts of entrepreneurial opportunities for on-demand type services, which will be very, very interesting. So I just wanted to wind up by asking you a final question, and thank you so much for your time. And I don't know if we're doing other questions or just me. No? Yes. We'll wrap up. I won't ask you. I was going to ask you about women in the boardroom, but I don't know if you have 1 or 2 sentences on that, and then thank you so much.
Yeah, we're finding it extremely difficult to find women to put them on the boards. There are a lot of our boards which are without women. Not that we don't want them, but where are they?
Yes, they're here. There's lots of women
We're
here.
just not able
Put your
to get.
hands up, please.
And I'm
The
really
minister
worried
needs
of
you.
I know. We're worried of the day when the courts can pull us up saying, what happened to your commitment to women? You're not putting them on the boards. When I actually look around for women for certain institutions, some are banks, some are multinational, some of our public sector undertakings and so on, I just don't get the women around. And yes, we want them on the boards. We will definitely actively engage in searching for them. We shall fulfill that.
Thank you so much. You're a wonderful role model. It's been a total pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Sitaraman and Rachel Whetstone, for this very, very engaging discussion. And we will certainly, Minister, take forward each one of your suggestions that have come through after today's event. I'd like to quickly invite Vinita Bimbit. She is president of FICCI Flow, the FICCI Ladies organizations that has helped organize today's event. And of course, Uber is in partnership with Flow as well.
I shall be very quick because I know the Honourable Minister has an engagement. But thank you very much, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, Minister for Commerce and Industry, Shri Ramesh Abhishek, Secretary, Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, Rachel Whetstone, Global Vice President Communication, Public Policy, Uber, members of the audience, members of media. A heartfelt thanks to the Honourable Minister to make time to be here with us today. We know how hectic your schedule is and we really appreciate it. You know, unleashing the power of female entrepreneurship can have a dramatic effect on a country's economy, and it empowers women. This is the cornerstone upon which I'm going to just speak about Flow for 30 seconds. This is the cornerstone upon which Flow was created 33 years ago. We have presence in 14 locations across the country. We have memberships in thousands of women, professionals, entrepreneurs. We are the largest chamber of commerce in South Asia. We promote entrepreneurial excellence and professional excellence at all levels. We have a business consultancy cell. We would like to work, in fact, with the Uber Pitch. I think Swayam and Uber Pitch could have a great, awesome connect together. We have Women Entrepreneurial Parks. The first one has been allocated in Hyderabad by the government of Telangana. We are skilling women in traditional and non-traditional jobs. We have a Mahila Hut. We provide e-platforms. We have multiple exhibitions across the country which provide women an opportunity to display their goods. We are the largest bank of women corporate directors. And we are a voice for policy change. We have worked tirelessly for many years, and we are really thankful to you for coming here today. Uber and Flow have had a fruitful partnership for about a year, especially with our skilling initiatives in driving. And we think the new product, Uber Pitch, would be an exciting fit for our business consultancy cell. It was a privilege to have you here with us. A big thank you from all of us. Thank you. Could I request for a quick photograph?
Come here.
I'm going to Yes. Thank you.
Come, please come. You will.
One hashtag and we would be responding. So I'm going to
Yes, sure.
just very wanted to turn out the show. Turn out, so I don't know what.